It's not that big of a deal. It's triggering. Now, does it mean that I have the right to feel triggered? Yes. Does it mean that I have the right to be upset at that person for triggering me? Not necessarily. Because what I have learned in this moment of duality that I love to talk about is that there are some people, to them, it's not that big of a deal because they've never experienced it, or they never take the time to feel through these experiences for them to recognize why it feels like it's overwhelming to you. But from the outside looking in, to them, it looks like you're overreacting to something that's not that big of a deal, right? I have learned to find grace with new people when they say this sentence, because there are some people where they are just total a-holes and they invalidate your emotions instantly because they just love to say it's not that big of a deal, get over it, you're being a crybaby, whatever, you're not what. That's rude, that's obnoxious. Those are the ones where I stay clear of people like that, because you're telling me instantly, this is how you treat yourself. This is exactly how you treat yourself on the inside. And that sucks because it tells me exactly how you're going to treat me now. But then there's also people where they've genuinely never experienced this level of trauma, or this level of inconsistency, or this level of intense emotion, that they can't comprehend feeling overwhelmed by a certain scenario or situation that's presented that might look like it's something easy to deal with, right? Like, think about work stress. Some people can handle work stress. They can hold it in and never say anything, like a ticking time bomb, and just eat it, suck it up. It is what it is. But they might pop off other ways. Then there's some people where they're consistently available and always there for you, but little things at work can trigger them to feel so overwhelming because they see the inconsistency in something that's happening that you might not. And for me, when I hear someone say, it's not that big of a deal, especially if I'm in an emotional state of unrest or I'm just bothered by something, you may as well slap me in the face. Because that's something that I'm learning to say, it's not so much about someone making me feel something, but everything is a stimulus. So it can stimulate, which could possibly trigger or turn on switches of things inside of me that I have yet to recognize that I had to deal with or still bothers me. And the reason it bothers me is because I know as a child I was invalidated. If I hurt myself or I was crying, you'll be fine, get over it, you'll be fine, it's okay. It's not okay. Right now, this sucks. Just say that. Ooh, that sucks. That is it painful? Dang, I'm sorry. Well, what can I do to help the pain go away? Give me options, give me choices. At least let me feel like you're in this with me to help me through it. But when you instantly say, it's not that big of a deal, you shut me down. Not even so much that I feel that I'm mad at you, but emotionally, you're shutting me down and you're making it come off as if now what I'm going through is not relevant, it's not important, and it's not worth talking about or working through. These are the little moments that make trauma. When we talk about trauma, a lot of people think, again, that it's something big where you got to get beat up and hurt and all this stuff. And again, it's unfortunate that happens to us. But there are some people who've gone through life unscathed. They've only been talked to sternly. They've never had anyone beat them up. They've never had to be in a fight. They've never had anyone take something from them or steal from them. They've never had anyone cuss at them or yell at them. They've only had a few elevated voices. And when that happens, guess what they do? I start crying because this never happened to me. We know who those people are in society. We gave them names and titles to clock them when we see them. But in that moment, here's the part of humanity we have to remember. Maybe that's as far as their emotional parameter goes. Some's is deeper, some's are not. Trauma is still trauma, unfortunately. So, what I like to do when I hear people saying something to someone else like it's not that big of a deal, why are they acting like this? It's not that big of a deal to you, but it clearly is to them. So you either have the option to help them relieve this stress, or you have the option to walk away and let them work through it the way they've always done, by themselves, with others around, or however they get that validation. I just know that for myself, it's really hard to receive information from someone who's always saying it's not that big of a deal. You don't have an opinion about nothing, it's not that big of a deal. Well, what's your opinion? Well, I've never experienced that, so I don't know how to feel about that. Okay, well, then say that. Right? I think it's a two-way street of knowing how to validate and invalidate. If we're so good at invalidation, we should learn how to be better at validating as well. And I think it's really hard. I think a lot of people make it harder than it has to be because for some reason we feel that truth of what the situation is should trump the experience of the emotion. And in both ways, it's a double edged sword. So, yes, sometimes that emotional outburst is not necessary in this moment, but it's also relevant to see that this is going to keep occurring if this is not dealt with, right? And so, for me, myself, I practice discernment by saying, is this person trying to be maliceful or is this person just trying to be helpful because they're trying to calm me down? And that's the part of empathy that matters, right? Yes, even the person who is being victimized or playing the victim, you have to have empathy for society as well for not knowing. Everyone's not going to know what you've experienced. They're not going to know how you've been ignored consistently throughout your life and how no one ever gives you the validation you require. So now at this very adult age, when someone comes at you the wrong way, now everything, all hell breaks loose and everything's falling apart because this person said this thing to you that you just can't handle. That's not fair either. And I will take accountability for myself when I do that. Now, I'm not saying that you can't call people out for when they do it because I do that too. If I see that the behavior is not changing, and I've told you consistently enough that you telling me is not that big of a deal, and you keep saying it because it's a part of your vocabulary, I'm going to ask you to go back and question why that's your answer. Why is that your default answer? Because that was taught to you. And unfortunately, that means an adult or a parent did that to you. When you felt something or needed something, instead of them trying to ask what you needed or help you figure it out or at least help you walk through it or just sit with you, they just brushed it off. It's not that big of a deal and you ain't dead, you ain't hurt, go do something else. But you're still going to do something else left with those unresolved emotions. And so this is the part of I feel when we talk about doing shadow work and trauma work and all these different things, that's what we're talking about. It's never going to be a perfect scenario. I mean, again, I can talk to you guys all day about emotional intelligence and everything else, and I can still go back to my own life and do things that aren't emotionally intelligent. But I recognize that when it's happening, I'm choosing how I react, which is the emotional intelligence part. To rely simply on, I made the statement, you need to apologize, and leave it at that, that's not enough. You made the statement, I'm going to explain to you why it affects me. And if you're going to keep choosing to affect me this way, then you will not be in my life to affect me. Does that make sense? I don't think there's anything wrong with letting these boundaries be set. But if every time anybody says something to you and you're not explaining why you're being triggered and you're just being triggered, that is your responsibility as well. And you have to take that ownership and say, okay, why does this bother me so much? And why am I letting it bother me so much? Because you have to remind yourself of the story. I know a lot of people say, well, you don't have to relive the story. You don't. But you have to remember the story sometimes to be like, yeah, because that's where I was. I was hurt then. I was in a very hurt place then. And I didn't have any answers and I didn't have any support. But now I'm not at that hurt place anymore. And I do have answers and I do have the support. So now when I see something happening, I have the choice to deviate from a path that I used to follow that hindered me. Versus now I have a path where I know that used to hinder me, but I can take this option and choose to believe that this person is trying to be empathetic and ask questions, because the only way to get answers is to ask questions. And if you're not willing to do that, then yes, you'll be stuck in a perpetual state of triggers and trauma and emotion, and no one needs to live there. It's okay to validate it and be aware of it, but to always live in that state of victimization and feeling attacked, that's a choice. So I say this with love because, again, no one's perfect. I go through things myself. This is something that I'm working on too. But I also want you people to remember, speak your truth and validate why you feel how you feel, and work with people. See how they'll work back with you, because you'd be surprised who's actually willing to come to the side with you and explain why they feel the way they feel, and you both can feel balanced and validated. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Love ya.